Vinyl friends, we've got a treat for you today. You remember our Canada show. If you don't, you should go back and watch it. Anyhow, we thought it was a great idea to do an all-Australian show. And what better way to do an Australian show than to have the real deal here? Wil Foster is from Australia.
You've heard of Foster's lager, right?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It's terrible beer. Yeah, it's terrible. It's awful.
Wil, we can't thank you enough for coming and sharing some of your favorite Australian bands with us.
Well,
I
thanks.
mean, how long have we talked about it?
Quite a while, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so surprising how many bands are from Australia that I think over time people have forgotten are from Australia. So, well, to start out with, tell us a little about your journey from there to here.
I came to the States in 1990, the summer of 1990, and came over to go to school, but I had ulterior motives. I was actually DJing in Australia. Rewind it to like about 1987, I think I started DJing.
Really?
And had hopes and dreams of becoming, a DJ. Of course, they weren't like the DJs now, not like the superstars, but, I wanted to make a living by being a nightclub DJ.
DJs are selling out arenas.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I would have been happy for like 4 people, and a free drink, maybe. I don't know. But it was funny because like Chicago House was coming on the scene.
Absolutely.
Like all that stuff was starting to happen, and I got a chance to come over to the States. And so to stay here long term, I was like, I'll go to school because I could get, be here for a while. But I wanted to be a DJ. And so it was, outside of Indianapolis, so I would drive to Chicago on the weekends, or I'd skip school. I did the 5-year plan, so it took a while. But the funny thing was, I was all into like the house scene and the techno scene and all that sort of stuff. Still love it, but I discovered industrial music because Chicago had Wax Trax, it had Ministry, Skinny Puppy, KMFDM were here at the time. Groups like Knights or Ebb and all that. I'd never heard of them in Australia. They just didn't make it over there. And so I kind of took a detour and I was like, forget that. I want to be, a badass industrial, DJ. And so fast forward, 30 years? I've gone back a couple times and come back a couple times, and I live here now. Yeah.
And for those of you who would like to check out Wil's work as a photographer, Rock Candy Photo.
Yes.
On Instagram.
Yep.
And I was just flipping through some of those photos today. He does beautiful work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's not Rock Candy Photography. That's a guy in Florida that soaps up girls and gets them to lean over like hot rod cars. I mean, you can go to that one if you want, but
yeah, go to them both. Why not?
That will make you happy. You go to mine. And
budget your time.
Yeah. Mine is kind of darker, moodier, and things like that. Yeah.
And it feels industrial. There's an kind of an industrial feel to a lot.
Yeah, and I work a lot in the industry, so I take a lot of like bands, photos, and things like that.
Yeah,
so,
high contrast stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, beautiful.
But I'm not sad or depressed. That's the weird thing. It's like I like all the dark stuff, but I got a rainbow inside. A dark rainbow.
Yeah, a dark rainbow.
With different shades of gray.
Yeah.
Yes.
That whole Chicago house scene in the late 80s, early 90s was really popping. I mean, there were so many great bands coming out. Nobody heard them here either.
Yeah.
I mean, because there was no internet didn't exist. Radio wasn't playing them.
Yeah.
You just kind of had to find them. But Chicago had so many venues where you could go see those bands.
Yeah. And even like emerging artists that were taking pieces of equipment that weren't supposed to be used for this and creating new genres like acid house and things like that all just happened here. And I know a couple guys from back in the day, and it's funny because they couldn't fill a room here, but they would go to the UK or Germany and it would just be mass hysteria, and so these guys that were bedroom producers and do tracks here, they'd go over there and just blow up.
Why is there such a difference between Europe's open-mindedness to that music and the US's? Because we're so steeped in pop music, maybe?
Well, I don't know. I think it was just, that's what was happening more in Europe.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would say in Australia as well. Like, we're really influenced by the Eurobeat, and people call it Italo disco now, but it was really Eurobeat because a lot of it was coming out of like Spain and Barcelona and like just different like parts of the world, and it was a very very electronic kind of thing. All I can kind of compare it to is like if you listen to early Pet Shop Boys, early New Order, like the Substance album. A lot of that is technically I would classify as Italo disco or Eurobeat, because they go to Spain and that on some breaks and hear the music and bring it back and that sort of thing. And so, but Australia was really open. Like you could literally listen to AC/DC and then like Europop or whatever, and it'd be fine. Even when I came here in the 90s, it was very separated. You were either into metal, rap was coming up, so you could mix that a little bit.
Then that fusion of rock and rap.
But before that, it was pretty cut and dry. From my perspective of being an outsider coming to the U.S., and it was very pop, like ladled, like sugar ladled, Whitney Houston, all that sort of stuff. And I just remember going, oh my gosh, what is this? This is crazy.
Except with college radio.
Yes,
that was the only bastion of hope.
Yeah. And it's funny how that really took over, even the pop charts. The pop charts ended up being these bands that started on college radio, the REMs and all that.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It wasn't really until Nirvana that people started to break out and say, oh, there's other stuff out there.
Yeah.
So, Wil, you're going to share with us some of your favorite bands, records, songs on the records. But my big question that, since we were talking about doing this, you've gone from Australia to the U.S., back to Australia to the U.S. So how many records made those journeys with you? Or have you, since you've been in the U.S. for as long as you have now, is your collection made of stuff that you've gotten here?
Yeah.
That's the thing that's sticking out in my head.
Yeah. Have you got like a box of Kleenex? Because I need to cry over some of this stuff.
So you're going to shed a tear for...
I had a pretty healthy record collection because I worked in a record store and also another retail store, and literally all my money went to records. And this is when you could buy a 12-inch single for like $2.99, $3.99. Imports were like $5.
Yeah.
Wheels and I are both former record store employees, so I feel you.
And so I came to the States, and I remember wanting some records and asking my parents to send them over, and they were too expensive to send over, because it was the early 90s and anything international was expensive.
Yeah.
And my mum informed me that my best friend at the time said that he had left some records at my house, which was totally crap, and apparently went through and helped himself to a couple crates full of gold. And so when I was on summer break, I came home, there was just a large amount gone.
To assess the damage.
Yeah. And like I said, a lot of this stuff was like out of like Europe and imports and really limited runs and that sort of stuff. And so, back then, now
irreplaceable.
Yeah. At least we have like eBay and like record fairs and things like that. But you got to think back then, something was in a store for a limited time, and when it was gone, it was gone. And you could flip through the back of a magazine and hopefully find something and then pay $30 and hopefully in 8 weeks they sent you the album, but then they didn't, you know, and so it was a different landscape.
It really was.
So to answer your question, I have a bit of a hoarding problem when it comes to vinyl.
We call it collecting.
I think I'm right at the 6,000 mark.
Okay.
I have quite a few, which, you know, there's some listeners going, I've got that in my back room and you haven't seen my front room and this and this. But saying I've got that many, knowing how many times I've lost large collections and lost huge chunks of it, or been in a situation which we've all been in and we're like, crap, I need to make some money. And I have sold entire collections and then spent years trying to buy them back or you know, do it back.
Yeah, it's part of the game.
Yeah. And it's funny because like a couple months ago, I was at a record fair and there was a guy, he's like, oh, remember I bought all these off you? And I'm like, I'll buy them back. And paid a lot more than what I sold him, but I walked away with, you know, a large chunk of what I had lost. But
they're time machines.
Yeah.
The more time I spend with it. And I was just at the South Bend record show this last weekend, and I was talking to a few people. As an adult, I have a more intimate relationship with my vinyl than I did as a kid, because as a kid you go, you know, you've got your parents' records, you grab them, you throw them, you scratch the hell out of your mom's Beatles records, Mr. Russell, you're welcome. It's been a while. And
it's a little inside.
Yeah, it's an inside joke. It's very entertaining.
Yeah.
So just smile. But now it's so intentional. It takes time to get the record, to put it on, to listen to that first side, to flip it, to listen to the second side. So I think now, as a grown-up who thinks it's ridiculous that we're spending $50, $60 on a record, and paying with my own money, I feel like my relationship with my music is so much deeper than it was.
Oh, absolutely.
As a kid.
Absolutely. And it's amazing because I love the hunt. That's really what I love doing.
That's what we've talked about.
And, you know, I'm looking for the obscure. I'm looking for those holes in my collection that I had at one point, or, you know, I never got a chance to get it because I was like, oh, I'll get it later, and then it's gone, you know. And so I love stumbling across stuff and going, oh my gosh. And to anyone else, it's irrelevant. Like, you know, half the people, they're just like, oh, what's that? And I'm just like, you don't understand. You know, there was a period in time that this song was big, and I was here. I mean, it's all emotional, you know.
Music is the emotion of our lives, really.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's a real mix.
Yeah.
Because now I'll spend the big bucks to fill in the holes, and I'll order something from Australia that I had there and lost, or I'll go on Discogs, or and I'll spend the $80 on the record that I probably paid $3 for back in 1987. You know,
you can't look at it logically.
No.
Did you ever get all your records from your parents' house?
Yeah, the ones that were left. There was a lot. Like, and when I finally went back, it didn't happen once. It happened a few times where my friend had come and picked out stuff, and, you know, and so it was well picked over, and that sort of thing. But
what did he think, you were on the International Space Station?
I don't know. I mean, I forgive him. It's super important, but at the end of the day, it is just stuff, you know.
Yes.
And then, like, you know, maintaining a friendship over, or losing a friendship over stuff is silly, especially when you're like a 50-year-old man going, you know, I still talk to this guy and give him crap about it, you know, and, you know. And
so does he still live in Australia?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because if he lived in the States,
we could get him.
Do you just go?
We'll go get him.
Do you just go by his house?
Well, it was funny because, like, when I
take one of his kids for a couple of days.
when I graduated from college, it was like literally years and years later, he came round with a cardboard box with no lid on it, with just a bunch of records just laying flat, crooked, bent, and all that. A couple records in the sleeves, and it's like, hey, here's your records back. And I still have them. They're unplayable, but they're sentimental.
Yeah.
It's just like
we think of like 2 or 3 bands from Australia. US really doesn't dig in. And even in the information age where you have a supercomputer in your pocket and you can look anything up, people are just uninformed about like where people are from or where groups are from. It's crazy.
Well, and there is a reason for some of that. In Australia, I don't know if you've heard of what they call the tall poppy syndrome. Australians are very proud to be Australian and to be relevant, and where at least when I was growing up
on the world stage.
Yeah, that didn't really interest them.
Mm-hmm.
There were bands that were twice as good as In Excess that nobody ever heard of. Just because they didn't care about breaking out, and it was almost seen as a sellout. There's a lot of Australians, I think now, that love In Excess again, but there was a period of time where they were kind of considered a little bit of a sellout, because they went to the US and stuff like that, and
chasing those dreams, those Hollywood dreams.
You're right, as a rock star,
Yeah.
But that's why there's such, and I'm talking in present tense. There's a whole genre of music in Australia that I have no idea about because I haven't lived there for so long. I keep tabs with some of it and things like that, but I'm talking about the bands that were in the 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s, and then I cap it off there because that's a lot of what I remember. But the Australian pub scene is huge, and it's a very grueling, it's a rite of passage, bands like Hunters and Collectors, to see them at a pub in St Kilda, is amazing, incredible. Or to watch another band do like a pub tour, it's just how you see those bands. And so a lot of the bands I'm going to show you, like, they were huge. They tour all around Australia. Everybody knew their music, but no one outside of Australia really knew who they were, and that sort of thing.
People here in the States, know what it's like to travel state to state. Maybe they go to Europe. It's a totally different thing to visit an island country that's 15 hours away.
Yeah.
I mean, the other side of the planet.
Yeah, you can't get any further away without starting to come back, pretty much.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the whole pub scene, because AC/DC was massive on the pub scene, and they were touring for 6 years before they even broke internationally.
Yeah.
That's hard to even fathom.
And a lot of bands will wear that as a badge of honor too. And here's the thing, there's a certain sound that kind of blanketed those bands, and you could tell the In Excesses when they came over to the States and started having different producers, it sounded more pop or more
polished.
Yeah, more polished. Yeah, exactly. And one of the things, and I've got some great friends that were in bands of that time period. When they broke out in the US, they had to do US versions of the songs, and they sound horrible. But there was so much pressure from the record labels that you need to sound like an American rock band because that's what's big. But really, I think if they had stuck to their roots and just been who they were, it would have been a little bit more accepted, over here.
The same thing happens with bands here that become popular. There's a kind of like a club scene. It's probably not like the pub scene in Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, but like you said, paying your dues, playing for nothing, for no one, and making your way up. So
it was really, I hate to keep beating the dead horse, but it was really Nirvana changed that, because in the 90s there was all sorts of different music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was everything from metal to ska to horns. I mean, even Big Band was starting to make a comeback.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Brian Setzer Orchestra. Yeah. So there was a wide swath there, and it's almost schizophrenic when you think back. The spectrum of things that were on the radio at the time.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we start with one of the bands where you showed us before we started. It had the Australian cover and the U.S. cover.
Yeah.
Because you don't even think about that sometimes it's a totally different release.
Yeah. Or sometimes they re-release and they do the American version for the American rock radio, and they create a whole new album and stuff like that.
Let me move this out of the way.
All right.
And you can.
All right. So my all-time favorite band, I've loved them since I started music, is a band called Pseudo Echo. So here's the Australian cover. Now I know people are going, oh yeah, Funky Town, yeah, but they're
which is exactly what I said when you mentioned them.
Yeah, which you know what they totally did that song some amazing justice, and I think it's one of those songs. It's like right now in the press, Rick Astley's getting a lot of this praise because he just did this massive, amazing cover of Foo Fighters.
Everlong.
Yeah. It was great, but I didn't realize there was a back history with Dave Grohl and Rick Astley and their mates and all that sort of stuff. But it's kind of like there was a Rick Astley before Never Gonna Give You Up, and it's like. But when we listen to that song, we're like, all right, that still kind of slams. I don't want to admit it, but it's catchy and all that. And it's the same with Funky Town. It's you listen to it. Just listen to it for the guitar riffs, and that guy can shred.
They rocked. They rocked their version of Funky Town.
Yeah,
they really did. They took a funk-based song that was huge in the disco era.
Yeah,
and injected it with some rock and roll.
Yeah,
that's not easy to do.
No,
and it's pretty ballsy.
Yeah. So as that sound and that song stands. If you rewound the clock to when they started to this album here, this is their first album. They were synth pop. They were almost. The only way to explain it is they were the Duran Duran for the dark kids, for the weird kids. Same time period. And so this album is 100% moody synth. There's some catchy kind of poppy sort of 80s sounding stuff in there, but it's totally void of the cheese 80s sound. The lead singer, his name's Brian, has this most amazing deep kind of almost gothic kind of voice, but he doesn't push it too far. He doesn't ride it into only being able to listen to it for a little bit, they were produced by the same producer that did Ultravox's stuff. They were around when early Human League and all that sort of stuff, and so you listen to the album and you can really pick up a lot of that. There's rumors. I tried to verify stuff before I came, but I couldn't get it, so I can't say it's true, but apparently they were in the same studio when Duran Duran were in the studio, and I heard there was some crossover between keyboards or sounds or stuff like that, because you listen to this and you're just like, oh my gosh, that's a sound that I've heard on Rio or something like that.
That is nice.
But brilliant album, start to finish. Every song is incredible in my book. It's my, if you have a top 10 desert island album, I'd take this 10 times just so that the copies wouldn't. I mean, it literally
so that
the copies wouldn't wear out. It's just it's okay, I've been here for 10 years. I need to do another one.
I have never heard that answer for
that's
that.
a good one.
But I'm going to use it.
But it is that in my book, it's that good and has shaped me as an artist, as a musician, as a visual artist. I was a 14-year-old kid and discovered these guys and never heard anything like that. I was just like, what is this music? And, the way they dressed, they were, looked cool and off the planet. And, it was, so don't be afraid of this one. Like if you probably won't see this one because this one's the Australian one. And if you can find it, it's crazy ridiculous.
Through the roof.
So the one that floats around America is this cover. Exactly the same album.
Similar artwork.
Yeah.
Good.
Same album, same track listing, same everything. If you see this, don't skip over it because you think Funky Town's on it. This literally is, my all-time favorite album.
So is this version just called Pseudo Echo?
I think it's called Autumnal Park as well.
Oh, okay.
And there's a few other ones where they will throw like little flash, advertising stickers on it and stuff like that. But it's basically the same album.
I love the hype stickers.
Yes, I know.
They're one of my favorite part. I talk about it all the time.
What's funny too is I remember back in the day, I didn't want the ones that had the gold. I was like,
promo,
that's like the promo. That's like the store promo. I don't want that one.
Now I seek those out.
I do too. Yeah, I'm just like I've literally probably got like 8 of these. If I see these in the wild, I just buy them.
Yeah. I just love that they basically say not for sale.
Yeah.
By punishment of the record police.
Yeah. So I don't know if I've done this album justice, but it really is.
I love that you love this album so much because I don't know their oeuvre.
Yeah.
But I know the band, and the first time I saw them, and it was Funky Town, I was like, holy shit, who are these guys?
Yeah, so they're all, it's all super moody and, here they are.
Yeah.
Like the Australian Cure.
Yeah, well, here's the thing.
With less makeup.
They toured with Susie. And it was when Robert Smith was doing
the guitarist,
that.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And so they did that, and they've done stuff with like Human League, and they've done, so, but then again, in Australia, everybody knows who they are.
Oh, here they are too. This looks like it's from the same photo shoot, really.
Yeah.
It's just a group photo instead of individuals.
Yeah.
So
cool. Are they still together?
Yes, and they're actively touring all over Australia.
Awesome.
Like, and they sound amazing. I was back in Australia before COVID, and you walk into a grocery store and they're playing some of their songs, or and I was lucky enough to be there when they were on tour and caught one of the shows. It was incredible.
Awesome.
But
is the lineup the same?
No, it's fallen apart, gotten back together, fallen apart, gotten back together. But the main,
just like American rock band.
Yeah,
yeah.
Basically Brian is kind of
the through point.
Yeah, and he really has like just done some amazing things with it.
Awesome. I'm gonna dig in.
Yeah,
Pseudo Echo.
Definitely.
I just love these dudes. Have you ever had the opportunity to photograph these guys?
Nothing official. They were, so I grew up in Melbourne, and so they were a Melbourne band. So there was a big rivalry between like Sydney, bands and Melbourne bands. No one cared about Queensland or anything like that. And Tasmania probably wasn't even discovered yet. But I'm just kidding. But the big one was,
don't piss off the Tasmanians.
Yeah, the big one was between Melbourne and like Sydney, and Melbourne had a really good take on synth music. So I was into a lot of like synth style music, and so you had them. Real Life, Send Me an Angel.
Yes.
Everyone kind of would know that they were from Melbourne.
Okay.
And a couple other bands I'm going to show you are from Melbourne and stuff like that. And so if you've heard a song and you really like it, they're probably from Australia.
That'll be the
that's a t-shirt for you. If you hear a song and you like it, good chances they're from Australia.
Well, I think that might be a little promo piece we could cut out.
It's funny, but every time I hear a band, I always check out where they're from. And a lot of times it's like, I've never heard this band. I hear them, I'm like, and it appeals to my taste, and often they're from Australia.
Yeah.
This is Wil and Your Life in Music.
Yeah. So this is an original. This is from probably, when was this? 1986. And so this would have been,
So 34 years ago.
yeah, and it's worn in. That's not fake, kids. That's not like AI generated oldie time stuff. That's like real.
I love the take on the Beatles photo that they're doing here.
Oh.
From With the Beatles and Meet the Beatles with the very sculpted flash of light from one side.
Again, another kind of pub rock band that kind of had some really good hits. Great, just rock roots. Just really good, throw in some keyboards and stuff like that.
Have we said the name? It's the Venetians.
The Venetians.
Calling in the Lions.
Yep. Cannot find it on iTunes, Spotify, or any of that sort of stuff.
Really?
It's not. I mean, you can look them up on YouTube because everything's on YouTube. And I think we were talking about maybe making
A playlist.
a YouTube playlist. So I will put their hit song from this. But just a great rock album. Just very, very 80s rock sounding, but not like US rock. I don't know how to explain it. You just have to listen to it and see if you like it.
Well, I want to point out that before we were recording, Wil was adamant about making a playlist so those folks that are listening or watching or both can experience this stuff.
No, I will literally handcraft like tracks, like standout tracks for you guys to listen to.
We're going to get Wil's mixtape.
Which is
Wil's
awesome.
Australian mixtape.
From down under.
So what's your experience with these guys? Did you just hear them on the radio as a young chap? Or?
Yeah. I actually snuck out and saw them at a pub one time when I was way underage. So the drinking age in Australia is 18. So I'm talking 15, maybe. And jumped over the back fence and met a couple mates and snuck into the hotel. So a lot of the pubs are what they call hotels. But it's not like a hotel like what we think.
Uh-huh.
You know, they're a little different. They're basically a pub with some rooms upstairs that you can sleep if you get too drunk and you can't go home. Kind of thing.
I like that idea.
Yeah, let's bring that over.
But it's where a lot of the bands play, and so they were just one of the bands. But when you guys asked me, I wanted to try to find some Australian bands that people haven't heard of, because
absolutely
I could have done the In Excess, the Midnight Oils, the Crowded Houses, stuff like that, which they're all amazing. But
AC/DC,
I wanted
Bee Gees.
Yep.
We
All
could go
Bee
down the
Gees
list.
show.
Yep. but I wanted to kind of find stuff that was like, you know, it's out there. And so like if someone's going through a record crate and they're just like, oh, I've always wondered who the Hoodoo Gurus are, but I've never checked it out. You know, check it out. You know, and that's with this one here. I have never seen this in the wild in the U.S.
I've never heard of them.
And they're, you know, I'll let the video do justice for it.
Yeah. And this is also another promo.
Yeah.
Folks.
And is that one that you brought over from Australia?
Yeah, this would have been one of mine when I was younger. The classic sloppy riding. Look at they are all amazing. The hair. Everyone had a lot of hair back then. That's a lot of hair.
80s hair was the best.
Yeah.
So what year did you say?
86.
86.
Yeah.
And it's Chrysalis Records.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah, I love the artwork. It's very cool. And lyrics,
Yeah.
you know, for those that want to read along and sing along.
Yes.
Yep.
You have to.
Let me turn this around because I really like these inner slip
I do too.
cases.
Yeah.
And the artwork on them and what people choose to include or exclude from them.
Yep.
It's fascinating to me.
Because it would have all been like deliberate. You know,
Yes.
there was nothing that was just kind of like, hey, let's, you know,
And you know those older records like from the 60s and 70s that were just the blank inner slip covers, blank paper. Like what a lost opportunity to use both sides of that space to do whatever. But no, it's cool. It almost were they on a TV show like Friends?
Yeah, they could have been.
They could have been.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially Rick.
Yeah. Rick had some hair.
Oh,
but he could dance too. Just wait for the video, guys.
Oh, okay.
You're
We're
gonna
see Rick
You're
dance.
gonna get all excited.
So, how many albums do they have?
I've got probably 3 of theirs,
Okay.
and then there's one before this that was more experimental, like more electronic-y kind of stuff like that. And so, I'll stop for a second.
Are bands allowed a little more leeway in Australia because here, if you become known for A, B, C, or D, the usual track for bands is stick with it and don't stray too far from it.
Well, Pseudo Echo is a perfect example. Their first album was I would even classify it as almost dark wave synth pop, new romantic, that kind of thing. Their second album was very electronic pop, very danceable, and then at the tail end of that they released Funky Town.
Mm-hmm.
Then their next album was a rock album, like a straight up rock. We're talking like arena rock sounding.
That's interesting.
Oh wow!
And
so they were
then-
just kind of going with the
Yeah,
flow.
they
this
went
is
with
the
it.
sound.
Things were, and this is way before grunge or any of that. And then they kind of broke up after that. And then when they came back, it was dance music again, you know. And now, if you listen to his stuff, he's doing like Nutbush City Limits covers, and just is screaming on the guitar, and is doing, you know, a lot of kind of funk and like really kind of good, you know, produced stuff. And so
the Australian audience is maybe a little more open-minded.
I would say it's a lot more open than I experienced here.
Awesome.
That's a good one.
That
The
goes on the
Venetians.
list too.
Yes.
All right, the next group is, and you will see this in record bins and at record fairs. Here's the Australian cover. They're a band called Wah Wah Nee. Just incredible. I don't even know how to explain it. Almost Prince-like funk and soul. But then here's the US album. So that's the US cover.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, and you know, some people are like, "Oh, I've seen that in the discount bin," you know, but don't discount it, because it really.
I see what you
Yeah.
did there.
But it's really good. So they love dance music, but it's not like techno or EDM or that sort of stuff. It was funk and soul and had a lot of like rhythm and blues to it, and a lot of like slap guitar sounds and things like
Nice.
that. And so very Prince sounding. Like the lead singer has a very kind of high voice where he can do, you know,
Falsetto.
really, and really some stuff like that. And so, and they even said that, you know, they were hugely influenced by like Prince and, you know, by bands of that sort of stuff. But you got to realize, you know, we were in Australia, we didn't have Motown, we didn't have access to all that stuff. And so
Right.
you've got guys that loved it and created their own version of it and twisted it a little bit,
Yeah.
and came up with something unique. Like it's, again, this is something that is, you know, stands on its own and, you know, just, you know, stands alone.
I love the art direction on the American release.
I do too. Yeah.
I think it's cool. I mean, you still have like the square motif
Yeah.
here, like you do in the Australian one. But
They're pretty boys.
no offense, but if I saw the two of these together, I'd probably
Yeah.
go to this one. Plus, there's a hype sticker that's got like 6 songs on it.
Yeah.
I'd probably go with the Australian version just
Really?
because it looks darker. It looks more like something that would appeal, and
Yeah.
that looks more
Polished.
polished.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's not what Wheels listens to or wants to listen to.
Yeah.
No, I love it.
So they're great. I mean, another good, and you can, I think you can find their stuff on Apple Music or Spotify and that sort of stuff. Again, I'll link 1 or 2 tracks to kind of show you like the progression of
I think
what
that's
they were.
awesome that you're willing to do that, because even though we all have access to it, I was just at the record show that I was at talking to a few people about how when we were growing up, it was a leap of faith to plunk down 798 on an album that you may or may not have heard a single from, or you only heard one single from it. And now the world's at your fingertips. You can sample anything before you spend the money on it.
Yeah. In those days, it was a lot. The cover was a big seller.
Yes.
I mean, I bought a lot of records just because
the way
really
it looked.
liked this cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that just speaks volumes to the interplay and the relationship between music and art.
Yeah.
And photography. And you know what I mean? And graphic artists. You can't separate them.
Yeah.
No.
And I think having a chance to kind of sample these, you'll understand, I think, what I'm talking about, how the vast contrast, like even in just what I'm showing you, it was all around the same time period, but there's dance, there's synth pop, there was rock records, there's, what would borderline as almost ska kind of sounding, and, things like that. But that's what I listened to. It wasn't like I just listened to The Cure, or I just was only into the Smiths or that sort of stuff, which I was, I was into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think doing the playlist, you're going to get an idea of like, wow, it was really like a melting pot of everything and anything, that sort of thing.
I want to circle back. You said that you didn't have Motown. So did like 60s and 70s soul and Motown not make its way to Australia, or it just didn't get played on the radio?
It did, but not to the extent of here. Not to the extent.
That's interesting.
We had influences from it, but it was probably a curated version of what it was. And I'm talking like, so I'm old enough, I was around with the birth of hip hop, and I loved hip hop growing up, but we only got what was sent over, and so when I would come to the States, or, my parents would come to the States, I would immerse myself in it, and I would just be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know these bands existed. And, we had like the big ones like Beastie Boys, Run DMC, but anything that was more underground, you had to go to a specialty record shop, and hopefully there was an import, and then again, it's, taking that leap of faith, and that sort of thing. And so I would say that was pretty true of Motown as well, or all that, and soul and that sort of stuff. R&B,
it's crazy.
It sounds like Australia was very nationalistic. I mean, very prideful of the music that happened in the country. And I mean, I can't really say the U.S. was that way, because there was the British invasion. In the U.S., it's like, that's good. That's going to be a hit.
Like, I loved all music from other countries in the U.S. and all that stuff too. Was a huge novelty. But, for our own bands, our homegrown bands, it was like, once they broke out, it was kind of like you're sold out kind of thing. It's called the tall poppy syndrome.
It's the same way everywhere.
That makes sense. But it's interesting, and I suppose you could even do a whole show on it at some time. But I have this theory about bands like Depeche Mode. I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan. But if you kind of do a survey, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. Like, I love Depeche Mode, the electronic Depeche Mode. I don't like the rhythm and blues and soul and that version of Depeche Mode. Same with U2. Don't like the rattle and hum era. I like Gloria. I like.
I'm the same way.
I like the War and those are my albums, because it was raw and it sounded like what I imagined it was like living over there. And you have bands like Depeche Mode. It was quirky synth pop, fashion, weird, French, English, the whole, like, that's what was a novelty for even being in Australia. It was like, whoa, check that out. They come to the US and they start sounding US. But I talked to a friend, he said, well, it's a theory. He goes, well, for Europe and those places, to sound like an American band, like a bluesy band. That's what they're into. And so he has a theory that that's why, you know, some of these bands that were really synth pop based or really had their own style sounded more American because they came over here and toured and were influenced, and then, you know, took that sound back because it was new and different for where they were.
It's interesting.
Because there was 100 Depeche Modes in, you know, the UK.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I'm really into a band called Nights Are Ebb. They're
I've heard in this round.
They're incredible. They basically, you know, started that what they call electronic body music sound. But I mean, I know the guys. They were so into funk. Like, and if you listen to even some of their stuff, it was funk electronic stuff. It had that syncopation of funk, the odd timing and stuff like that. And I can never listen to it to the same now after they told me that, because I'm like, yeah, that's true. I mean, they're screaming and chanting and yelling, and it's synth drones and all this stuff is going off, and, you know, but some of the roots of it are very funk based. You know, and they talk about that to the point where half of the group, you know, one of the half of the group, he has this new project called Microfunk, and it's incredible. He goes down to Mexico, and it's got horn players and all that sort of stuff, and, you know, it's really, you know, super just legit sounding.
So I'm imagining like George Clinton,
probably, yeah,
Chic. You know, all that
well,
stuff from the 70s.
I think George Clinton actually did a remix for them.
Oh, did he?
I think in the 90s or something like that, or there's a something like that remix. Yeah. But,
that's cool.
All right, next album is probably the newest one. Most of my stuff is literally from like the 80s, early 90s.
All the good stuff's from the 80s, man.
This one is kind of like a White Rhino. This was a band, they're still around, called Rat Cat. They really took some of the Ramones sounding stuff and then turned it into almost surf rock sounding. Wow. And so it's really catchy, really surf rock kind of thing. They were huge. They blew up out of nowhere in Australia, and literally just, you couldn't turn the radio on or watch the TV without seeing them or doing something. This album here was it 89, 90? I'm not sure when that was, but it was just when CDs were coming out more, and so there was that whole magic area where vinyl kind of shrunk, and then we're just all like, how come I can't get this on vinyl? You know, it's a huge record. Well, it's because they didn't really press it to vinyl, or they pressed very little copies.
The record company was, you know, like the drug dealer. The first one's free, and then buy CDs.
Yeah. It's like trying to find the Cure Wish on original vinyl, you know, or Smashing Pumpkins, you know, stuff. It's just, you could get it everywhere, but just not on vinyl.
Isn't it
I would have gotten that one just for the cover.
The cover is amazing. Yeah, I don't know if there's more inside.
So is this what healthcare is like in Australia?
It is. Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't know what is on the
I need
inside.
to come there and get sick.
I think this. No, it's just. Oh, look at that. That's sad. It's just there's no inner sleeve.
So this has to be.
This is what I was just talking about. Just the paper sleeves.
Yeah, but they were just like surf punk rock stuff, and very catchy, very short.
3-minute pop songs.
Yep.
And a trio.
Yep. And
is it? Forgive me. Is it like? Oh, it says 91. So it was,
yeah.
Or at least the art.
Yeah, that would have been when it came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think it came out when I was coming to the US for the first time, because I remember I brought it over and no one had heard of them. I was like, "Have you heard it?" And
I'm excited to listen to this.
Yeah, I am too.
They're very good.
Love the Ramones.
Yeah.
Love the 3 chords, 3 minutes.
I love surf rock.
Yeah. It is pure surf rock. I mean, it is so good. And they have albums before this too. So they were the ones that were in the club scene for years and years that just struggled. They do a really good cover of I Think We're Alone Now by
Tommy James and the Shondells.
And but just they murder it in a good and bad way. I mean, they're so out of key and off, but they just didn't care. They just, even on this, some of the there's some like sour notes, but you're just kind of like, yeah, that's kind of cool.
I revel in the imperfections.
Yeah.
In a day when people are paying hundreds of dollars to go see bands play, big air quotes, and there's tracks being played.
Yeah.
The imperfections are what makes rock and roll.
Yeah.
What makes it dangerous.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So basically, if you see this,
buy it
in the wild, just buy it, because I don't want to even tell you how much I paid for this.
I love it. I mean, we were talking about art and the importance of it, and you see this. Everybody may not buy it, but they're going to look at it.
Yeah. Well, Simon Day, he's the lead singer, so he drew he was behind all of the imagery. So like
that's even better.
All their albums, this little logo was the little rat and the cat was on everything,
I love
and
that.
So that was all his stuff, where he would just draw a lot of it. Another band is called Machinations. They have, I didn't know which one to do because there's a single and there's their second album. I don't know how to describe them. Bit of electronic, a bit of 80s, but not what you think. Not Glenn Fry and Miami Vice 80s.
No, you belong to the city.
No.
The heat is on.
No.
There's a time and place for all that. But I mean, this just sounds like Australian 80s pop rock. I don't know how to describe it.
I think that's a good way to describe it.
Well, you guys were listening to Whitney Houston. We were listening to Machinations.
There's a difference. I was hearing Whitney Houston occasionally.
Yeah,
but I was not listening.
But again,
and R.I.P. Whitney. You had a beautiful voice. This is 80s.
Yeah. Yes.
John and I, especially
lightning.
Some of the records that John brings, the artwork just absolutely
I think
screams.
you would really like them. They're good. It's just I wish I could play now. But again,
look at this guy.
He was.
Is he the keyboard player?
He's the singer.
He's the singer.
Oh
okay.
Yeah, and he wore it's funny how he wore the button-up shirt with the rolled-up sleeves, but then the metal kind of
armband.
Yeah, so he looked almost like from what was it, the Roaring Twenties?
Yeah.
So he wore the dress, kind of the Peaky Blinders dress pants, and he dressed like that, but then he would sing, and keyboards would be going and all that. Sort of stuff.
I thought he was the keyboard player, but he looks like he means business.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, they all do.
He was very serious,
and they look like they might have, at least in this layout, a little older guys.
Yeah, and I always thought that too. Like even being younger, I was like, oh, these guys look older. They probably weren't. They were probably in their 20s.
Yeah.
They probably just drank a lot. Who knows?
Wait a minute. Does that happen in Australia? Do people like to drink?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I've heard, but I love the art design on this because, it may speak to a certain time when you look at the color, the palette, and things like that, but it all holds up.
Yes.
And it's all almost like 90% of it. Yeah, the lightning bolts.
It almost looks like, what was that truck that chased people?
Maximum Overdrive?
Yeah, doesn't it kind of almost look like a Maximum Overdrive cover?
Yeah.
That was AC/DC. Who made who?
Yeah, it was Who Made Who.
Love that song.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because that's Stephen King's story. Yes. And AC/DC is like one of Stephen King's favorites. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that is amazing.
Yeah.
So that's all I mean, just please watch the video. Yeah.
Okay. Machinations.
Machinations. Like Big Machinations. Okay. So this band is super controversial. They're a band called Noiseworks. This is from, the 80s. So this first one would have been 88.
Okay.
Okay. So John Stevens is the lead singer. He's from New Zealand. So in New Zealand, he won some kind of singing competition, and he was like this real pretty Donny Osmond kind of, local hero, did these songs and was real big and all that sort of stuff, came to Australia and created this band called Noiseworks. Pure rock, just driving, great rock all round. We're talking pianos, we're talking just epic builds and all that sort of stuff, but not rock as in like US rock, like Sunset Boulevard rock.
Okay, so not what most people would call hair metal.
No, absolutely not. These guys were even though they look, very pretty there, they were working guys,
Okay.
And they sung about, that sort of stuff. Almost, In Excess had that kind of vibe where they looked Hollywood, but they still looked like boys, except when Michael Hutchinson, would do some of his stuff. But huge band, really big band in Australia, like another one that everyone would know even to today. When Michael died, he took over for Terence Trent D'Arby stepped in for a little bit, and then John Stevens sang for I think a couple years with In Excess.
No kidding.
And
okay,
if you do like YouTube searches and that sort of stuff, his versions are just amazing. He has the most incredible rock voice, just like thunders. So the controversy is the band Kings of Leon, the lead singer. I don't know because I don't want to get sued or anything like that. But apparently he was really influenced by some of Noiseworks stuff.
Really?
And there's songs on this album here that sound very similar to Sex on Fire and that sort of stuff. Even the way Kings of Leon's lead singer sounds and John Stevens sound is pitch identical.
Okay, I'm gonna have to take a look.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out too.
And there's a lot of things like look at this and listen to this and listen to that. Listen to those. Hey, how is this a coincidence kind of thing?
I wonder how that comes about.
Well, it's funny because he makes fun of it. Like I've seen little clips of concerts where he does some Kings of Leon stuff and just kills it.
Nice.
But they have several albums. This was their second one, and it was actually bigger than this one.
I love these photos on here.
Yeah.
Those are cool.
Brilliant, solid meat and potatoes, Australian rock, just great sounding stuff.
I love this. Is this a hype sticker on the back?
Is it?
Yeah.
It is.
It's like a sticker on the back, and it says, "Touch is hot. Touch, Noiseworks' second release, is burning in their home market." So this is like
that's a US one. So you'll find this album in record bins every once in a while.
This is also a promo.
Ah.
See, right up here.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love these hype stickers. Usually just have songs that are on the record, but this is like a bio of the band.
Yeah.
Like introducing them into the U.S. That's cool.
And so never really made it big in the U.S. And I don't know why, because all these bands I've played have been just huge household names in Australia. And so they're another band that is just incredible.
I love it. This is great.
Yeah, it's strange how bands can be in one area and be just massive, but then in a broader area, they're not. And you just don't understand why.
Yeah, because there are some bands that are nationally and internationally famous, and then in certain parts of the U.S. just don't click with people.
Yeah.
Which is odd,
Yeah, I don't know. I heard, I saw an interview, decades ago with Bono from U2, and he made the comment about there's 100 bands that are better than we are in Australia that no one's ever heard of. They didn't make it out.
Yeah.
And I think this band is definitely one of those bands that they're not party album. They were just great musicians, and really kind of do that. And so what's fun too is if someone does take the time to look them up, look up some of the live shows, just massive crowds, just incredible.
That's awesome. So another pub band.
Yep, that broke out, and they really made it big, and you know, are definitely an Australian staple.
I think that's you know, there's similarities, like we were talking about the club scene for bands in the U.S., but there's a blue collar attitude.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to phrase it.
Yeah, that comes from paying those dues, making nothing, seeing no one in the crowd, and continuing to do whatever it is, your art that you do.
Yeah.
So
that's them.
Awesome.
Next band is also from Melbourne. They're called Kids in the Kitchen. This is the Australian album cover. Pretty simplistic. And then there's the Let's Spruce It Up for the U.S. market.
Well, I mean, it's simplistic, but that looks like a hood ornament.
Yeah, it is. Like, I think it was from, I don't know if it's in here, but here's how they kind of looked. Very synth pop kind of, you know, I say synth pop, they still had guitars and bass guitars and all that sort of stuff, but I would call it more synth based kind of music, you know, and they had a couple really big hits.
I love it. What's on the other? Did we see the other?
I think words.
Oh, just lyrics.
Yep, just words. And then...
Okay, so this is the Australian.
Yeah, that's Australian.
And then there's the American?
It's the exact same playlist as that. So again, they just repackaged it for the American market.
Interesting.
And I have seen that around. And so, you know, a lot of these, you know, do exist in record bins at record fairs or used shops and stuff like that.
Did your fascination with promos happen back then? Or because this is another one?
Yeah. It's funny because like if there's two copies and one is a promo, one isn't, I will grab the promo.
I do the same.
It definitely happened later on because I was really irritated and I didn't want the bargain bin version.
Right.
You know, I wanted the one that was factory sealed and,
you
know, didn't have the hole cut in it because why would you cut a hole in it?
Right.
You know.
And one that's not punishable by law if you were to sell it or listen to it, right?
So, Will, earlier we were talking about bands with horns.
Yeah.
And how that a lot of Australian bands had incorporated horns into their sound.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples?
Yeah, I'll show you. There's two albums here. I'll pull them both out together. A lot of vinyl guys have heard of Hunters and Collectors, but they're the quintessential Australian pub band. Just if you haven't seen, you know, them play in a pub, then I think you get like kicked out of Australia or something like that. It's kind of like.
Do you get sent to Tasmania?
You get sent to New Zealand.
New Zealand. Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like being into the Grateful Dead. You've either seen Dead and Company, or you've seen Grateful Dead, or you've seen
all
something
the offshoots.
Yeah, at some time, and you can't really call yourself a Deadhead unless you've seen that. You know, and that sort of. Well, it's the same with Hunters and Collectors. I've seen them several times in pubs growing up, and the most amazing, you know, electrifying shows. But they've always used saxophones and trumpets and trombones.
Right up my alley.
In their stuff before ska.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of crazy. Like, I was literally playing some of this for a friend the other day. He goes, oh, that's ska. And I'm like, maybe, I don't know, but ska wasn't really around.
Yeah.
But all these guys did it. Oh, here's another one. Hold on. Yeah. Painters and Dockers. Another one that is, you know, they're punk, but they had, you know, horns. And, you know, he talks about, the lead singer talks about, you know, when he was younger, seeing the Sex Pistols for the first time and blowing his mind, and the fact that they couldn't sing well or play music well. You know, they wanted to do that sort of thing, and they're completely punk rock, but not punk rock like you would expect. You know, they're not like the Dead Kennedys, or they're not like, even like some of the US punk stuff. They're not like that. They're their own blend, and they use horns. And so Painters and Dockers were incredible. Hunters and Collectors is another one. And you'll find a lot of Hunters and Collectors stuff all over the US because they did college tours back in the 90s. You know, one of the times I saw them, I think it was like in Cleveland or something like that. I was in college and they were playing. There's a really cool live version of one of their songs that Eddie Vedder is a huge Hunters and Collectors fan.
Oh, cool.
I've heard a lot of people. I love Hunters and Collectors.
He actually does one of their songs in concert, and the lead singer, Mark Seymour, came out and sung it with him live, and it's incredible. As big as the Pearl Jam, like people are, it's when he sings it, it feels right.
That's awesome.
You know, I actually felt bad for Eddie, singing it, and it was like, all right, dude, let Mark do it. And I mean, I will link that one, because he sings it with such conviction and such, power, and it's incredible. But they have so many albums.
Yeah.
I think they have like maybe 12 or 13 or maybe even more. I don't know.
And a lot of their songs are very blue collarish.
Yes.
I mean, heck, they've got that song about a tow truck.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it is, it's like, hide the key for me because I might be, I'll be so drunk when I come home.
Yeah.
If you don't want me to come in, hide the key. And, there's like, they're very sing about everyday life in Australia. And then there's always like Midnight Oil. They're very political. These guys have like a strain of politics through them too, but it's local politics. It's politics usually about how Australia treated the Aboriginals, or the mining, like Blue Sky Mine, is a classic example.
Love that record.
Yeah, it is. It's good.
It's so good.
But I mean, they're a great horn. They have horns, and then another one.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's another promo.
Oh, nice. Huxton Creepers again. Another band that fits right. There was like a whole bunch of band. There was the Johnnies. I would say Bear Garden, Huxton's Creepers. All those bands sounded kind of similar. The Saints. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Saints. Oh yeah. Saints kind of verged a little bit of that sort of stuff. But a lot of that kind of fit in there. These guys are like super amazing and off everyone's radar.
Yeah, I only recently discovered them through a podcast I listened to called 80s Underground, and he played some Huxton Creepers, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get that.
Yeah, it's and once you listen to it, you're like, oh, I've needed this for like so
long. How did I not know?
Yeah, but then again, how crazy is this? I listen to that, and then I'll pull out the synth pop album, and I would listen to them in the same day, or same, on the same mixtape and that sort of thing.
My taste is from one end of the spectrum to the other too. I mean, I have no problem going from jazz to metal.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
But
also another promo.
I think that's what is probably pretty unique, like with your listeners as well, is they love the music, they love the hunt, they love the experience of having vinyl, they love all that sort of stuff, and so they probably listen to very similar, a wide spectrum of music as well.
I think so, but as this show has gone and matured, if you can call that, with me and him hosting it, this show has, I always say, has become more of a music appreciation podcast.
Yeah.
That talks about vinyl.
Yeah.
With a vinyl focus than really a vinyl podcast.
Yeah.
Because of the reasons that I mentioned earlier about feeling that more intimate relationship with the music.
Yeah.
And just feeling it more and having more of a connection to it now. Yeah. I mean, I feel so lucky to be 50.
Yeah.
And still appreciate music the way that I do, because I know a lot of people as they get older, they don't.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Have either of you guys ever snuck in records so your wives won't see
that you're buying them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've left it from shows because she knows there's going to be a haul, and I might leave them in the car before I go in.
It's hard for me to do that. And I have to give my wife so much credit, which today's her birthday too. So happy birthday, Rachel. She knows how much it means to me, how much I love it. Yeah. All of it. I mean, an entire wall of our front room is my records.
See, I would love to come see that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm very lucky, and we all are very lucky to have significant others, family members who are willing to accept the sickness that this is. So I can't thank her enough for knowing how much it means to me and allowing me to do it. Yeah. So no, I don't have to sneak records, but I go on buying freezes. Self-imposed buying freezes. Yeah. It's too easy anymore. I mean, you were talking about mail order records from the 80s. Now you literally you spend 15 seconds on your phone. You
click a button
and it shows up at your house 2 days later. We live in amazing times, but we also live in expensive times.
Yes.
Well, and I mean, the beauty of some of the, like the Huxton Creepers, some of these bands Will's talking about, a lot of U.S. audiences just don't know. So like even record dealers and record stores may say, just put it in the discount bin. Because I bought 2 Huxton Creeper records, and both of them have been $5 or under.
Yeah.
I love this. And then we have the guys on the back here, the photo at the train station, right?
Yep.
But this something is dry. Is this Napoleon?
That's Napoleon. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because there's Paris.
There's Paris. So
what does the back look like? I don't even know what the back looks like.
That's
there they are.
Oh man.
Cue the wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they find. I can't do an Australian accent, and I won't insult you. But I can see them saying, "Well, let's take a picture where there's something that sort of reminds you of the Eiffel Tower."
Yeah, that's true. I think
Where is that?
I think that is the Western Suburbs Bridge, because that's a Holden. That's an old. That's a Australian brand of car. I think they're from Melbourne. I can't remember, but if that is, that's the bridge that goes from the Western Suburbs to the other side. It looks like it. Because it looks like there's all the shipping dock backgrounds and all that. So, yeah.
How many did these guys have? A bunch of records out?
No, they weren't as popular as some of the other guys, but they were part of that class of, they were in that genre,
like that movement.
Yeah. It's like, so if you listen to was it shoegaze, there was a whole bunch of there's like Ride and all these other bands that would have been part of that whole thing, and then it would have sprung off a little bit. And I'd even put like Hoodoo Gurus kind of in there in there a little
Absolutely.
bit, because they've got a little surf rock kind of little stuff, and then they even sound like some of this stuff. But
what about I've noticed a lot of these records are big time. Did you trust labels like?
Well, it's funny because when you're going through and you're like focused, you'll see stuff. And so I've discovered Australian bands that I never really listened to back then, but because I saw the label, like Hoodoo Gurus is big time. I just grab it.
Yeah,
I'd be like,
because I trust this label, and it's going to be...
Absolutely.
We've talked about that with IRS.
Yeah.
They're different.
You see that little spy guy, and
it's like,
you got to get it.
I'm going to get this because I'm going to, more than likely, there's going to be at least a song I'm going to like.
But that's another layer to the iconography of the logos that these labels choose.
Yeah.
And they know that people like you guys and me will see that, and that's instant. That's an instant person in your head saying that you're going to like this.
Yeah.
Well, and I think labels mattered a lot more in the 80s and the 90s.
Yes.
Than
Absolutely.
they do now.
Yeah.
Like if I see anything Wax Tracks, I will buy it sight and say, I'll just be like, or mute. Anything, you see that little running guy, it's in my thing. And I bought stuff that I didn't even know what it was, and I'm just like, it's,
It's so I'm fascinated. Some people make fun of me for it, but I'm fascinated with the labels and what they mean and how they came up and how they came to their prominence and the logos and the colors and the placement where things are. I mean, all of that. I love the whole experience. I mean, I was the kid that when I got the record, I'd take it out and I'd read all the lyrics. I'd read who was playing what, who produced it, who executive produced it, who mixed it. I mean, it's a sickness.
No, it's a sickness that the kids don't have these days.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's sad that, you know, and I'm sure this conversation has come up a million times, is where albums are designed. They were a journey. They were, you know, you knew what was the first song and what was the last song on side A, and
why they were put into those positions.
And it just, you know, you get singles. You know, you get flash in the pan, quick singles, and you know, there's a few bands that are trying to bring some of that nostalgia back, which I'm glad it is coming back, but I think we did so much damage that some of it's lost forever.
We did an episode with our friend of the show and director and basically executive producer of the show, Keith Toombs, and the whole show was basically how the Beatles introduced the world to the album experience. And it's true. I mean, I'm that kind of dude that when I listen to an album that I love, that I grew up with, I'll occasionally listen to it random order, but it's so implanted in my head and my heart that album order.
That
that's how I listen to it.
Yeah.
And then you always know, you know, this song, that's when I flip it over.
And there was bands, I mean, even stuff that I didn't really listen to, I respected enough. Like, so when you bought like a Joe Satriani album, you knew it wasn't something you're just going to pluck a song out of. You had to listen to the whole thing.
Yes.
Queensryche, other than like Silent Lucidity, you know.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like you bought it for the album and what that album in its entirety was going to do to you, you know.
That's a great point.
Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dark Side.
Exactly. You can't just pull a song out of it. I mean, you can, but it doesn't. When you listen to it as a whole, you're just like, oh wow.
It's just more encompassing.
Yeah.
I mean, Dark Side of the Moon almost gets that title almost gets spoken in every show that we do.
Yeah.
Because it's sold like 50 million copies.
Yeah.
But it is an archetype.
Yeah.
Of an album, of you know. Of music, of the culmination or the combination of the art and the music and the band coming together.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
I think some of the destruction of that has been the corporate world and trying to turn a quick buck on things like that. Like, I think there was more of a freedom to explore and be experimental and try stuff. You know, I don't think anyone was telling Pink Floyd, well, we need, you know, that hit song that's going to sell that breakfast cereal. You know, you better do it.
Yeah.
You know, or you know, that sort of stuff. Or, I mean, it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, and now, you know, pop stars are in McDonald's ads. They have their own meals. You know.
It's true.
Yeah.
We live in a different time.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still a consumer society.
Yeah.
But the intention, like I was talking about earlier, that it takes to listen to the record and appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's everything is sped up.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's attention span
has
time for 2 album sides. So
I sure do.
I do too. Actually, I seek it out now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, let me show you another one.
Yes. Gotcha.
Hugely underrated album, again, because of one single. Big Pig. I don't even know how to talk about this album. They had a whole look. First of all, there's like 85 drummers in the band. You know, they're literally everyone plays percussion.
Yeah.
And
so it's like Blue Man Group before their time.
I don't know, maybe Blue Man Group copied them, but you can kind of see it a little bit. But they had slaughterhouse aprons, like that's all they wore was slaughterhouse aprons, and they played drums. And
I love it already.
John, do they sing?
A little bit, and there's a lot of horns in this, and there's a lot of like
it's over the top
It's
for wheels.
percussion.
So she has the biggest voice you ever heard. So there was a movie years ago called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and they had a song called Breakaway in it.
Yes,
I can't break away. So that was their hit.
It's a great
record.
soundtrack.
But that song,
It's
not the star one on the album.
Gotcha.
They have some stuff on there that you would probably lose your mind over. There's 3 singers, 1, 2, 3. They all play drums, and to watch them live, it's just crazy. And they're just, it's visually, like when they come out, everyone's like, "What's going on? We don't even understand this." You know, you've got all, you know, it was in the time where, you know, Richard Marx, you know, was wearing like skinny ties, and Albie Shore and all that stuff, and these guys come out and slaughterhouse stuff and playing
Just
drums,
banging drums
and horns, and just singing like almost like blues. But some of this even gets so intense it almost gets gospel, like where she is almost like rampant gospel singer, kind of off the hook, like kind of gone lunatic.
Wow. I love it.
And so, brilliant album. If you see it, like you see it everywhere, like that, like I see it all, like every time I go record shopping, and sometimes I just want to tell people like, "Hey, get this," or I've bought it a couple times and gifted it to my friends because it's
a
that,
super one.
It's that good of album.
1988.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good year.
Are they still together?
I don't know, but I can't imagine, and I'm trying to remember the lead singer's name, her name. I can't imagine she's not involved in music somehow, because she was so phenomenal and had such, just a little thing, and had this huge, thunderous, almost like gospel, you know, kind of Aretha Franklin voice. Awesome. Just this, and then the music was put to it was weird, and you know, it didn't expect it.
Yeah.
And so
That's cool.
It's a great album.
Awesome. Love it.
I'll just do this one really quickly. Boom Crash Opera, another great Australian band, really good. I'll put the link to a video. Just another great, hardworking Australian band that made it big and have a lot of talent.
I feel like I've heard their name.
Yeah, I've heard them on that 80s podcast.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got, and then what's crazy is they're still around, and so a lot of these Australian bands have gone on tour together. But they do acoustic sets so they do acoustic versions of all of their rock songs.
No kidding.
And so you've got this group here, Kids in the Kitchen, Pseudo Echo went on that tour,
Cool.
a bunch of other bands, and then they do fully reconstructed versions of their 80s hits, but it's all like acoustic.
Now, are those tours just in Australia?
Yeah, I haven't seen them come over here.
That's
now,
cool.
A couple of years ago, Pseudo Echo came and played at the Viper Room. They did a live concert at the Viper Room.
Cool. I believe the Viper Room is no longer there.
Yeah, I know. It hasn't been there for years.
Yeah,
but,
I went there
in spirit.
Yeah, I went. I went there. I think in 2019, I took a trip out there.
Yeah,
got to experience the Viper Room.
Yeah.
Very small.
Yeah, I experienced it in the 90s, and then I experienced it many years later, and it was just a shadow of what it was.
Its former self.
Yeah, I'm surprised I got in the 90s. I think I had a cool hairstyle or something. Who knows?
And you got the ring wear there.
Look at
too.
that. Yes. Yeah. And that's their first album.
This is Warner Brothers Records.
Yeah.
I love the look of the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just
kind of like sepia textured.
Yeah. But I mean, you talk about like iconic looking, like to me, this is a very iconic cover because I grew up with it. Like I saw it, but just the way, the shapes, and being a photographer, man, that's what I buy records. Just the way it curves down and the shapes.
It's beautiful.
And that was probably one of 50 shots that they took that day, and they purposely chose that.
When you first put it up there, I was like, that's an outtake photo.
Yeah.
That's like not a posed
Yeah, it's not posed at all.
So
it's very Echo and the Bunnymen kind of looking.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or like the Smiths, or you know, that kind of vibe.
I love it though. I mean, it immediately spoke to me. So now I need to listen to it.
Great album.
Awesome.
A lot of people know, well, a lot of older people know the Divinyls because of I Touch Myself in...
I'm sorry?
Hold on. But man, did they have like a career before any of that even unfolded.
They are so... Every album of theirs that I've heard is just fantastic.
She was...
Powerhouse.
Yes. And I can't help but think... iconic in the way where I think she really laid the ground and almost gave permission for future female artists to be
powerful.
Yes, and that kind of sassy. I mean, in the 70s and all that, you had, you definitely had some of that, and the 60s you had like Janis Joplin's and that, but that kind of got lost for a little bit. And I think when she came on, I mean, she would dress in a the Catholic schoolgirl's uniform and fall over, and her underwear would be sticking out, and that's nothing now, but I remember watching it as a kid, hoping my parents didn't see it, or
shocking.
And she just didn't care. She was so hot but so unattractive and so belligerent and beautiful at the same time.
Isn't that?
And I mean, just she was the girl that your mom and dad didn't want you to date, but you really wanted to go out with her. There's another group, they're from England, called Transvision Vamp. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Wendy James is very similar to them. I will turn you guys onto them after the show.
Okay.
Incredible band. She was another just, I don't care, I'm going to beat you up if you look at me kind of sideways kind of thing. But her voice was crazy.
Yeah, I just bought this, I think, like 2 years ago at a record show. Because I don't see their stuff pop up a lot.
Yeah.
And I saw it.
And it's not expensive either.
No. I think I paid $10 for it.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure I got both these for like $5 or $6.
Yeah. And then there's What a Life.
Yeah. Which it's just, again, she just, and again, an absolute respected staple in Australia. Like, everybody loved her. And
when I saw Garbage the first time, and Shirley Manson,
that's
who
what I was thinking of.
That's
too.
who I thought. That's who it reminded me of.
And it really makes you wonder if you could have like an honest conversation with some of these female, people, that tend to think that they start the trend if they're really influenced by. If she's like, I used to rock the Divinyls, back then,
or if it would be, she just passed away.
A couple years ago. Yeah.
But it would be interesting to hear. What was her name?
Christina Afflet.
She just passed away a couple of years ago, but I think it would be really interesting and I'm sure she's done interviews and print and on TV about their career. But was it intentional? Was she trying to get a point across, or just trying to get attention?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But the first time I saw Shirley Manson, I was like, that looks like the lady from the Divinyls.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so, like, if you find these, grab them, especially this one.
Oh, look at her. She's got the sailor's uniform on there.
And I could never figure out if they were a couple or not, because she'd be all leaning over, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they were the X-rated Roxette, It's, it's like, what is going on here?
Who Savage Garden copied everything off
Yes,
of.
yeah.
I loved Roxette, too. I mean, very poppy, but...
Yeah. Yeah, in Savage Garden, they were Australian, but...
Yes.
There's none of them in here. Sorry. Sorry, Savage Garden. Yeah.
Savage Will, Savage Garden. No, I love the Divinyls, man.
Yeah, just
and
kind of a throwback band, but contemporary at the same time.
Well, and they're a band that MTV helped blow up too.
Yep.
Yes, and that's the thing. I think there's some bands that someone's like, oh yeah, I remember that song. I Touch Myself. It was good, but they don't go deep.
Yeah.
And that's where I have that personal campaign about. Yeah, you've heard Funky Town, but go listen to what happened first. Listen to what took it to there.
The magic is in the album cuts.
Yeah.
The magic is in the deep cuts.
Yeah.
The ones that that sail out there and smack us across the face. They can be good. Just because they're famous doesn't mean that they're bad songs, but those cuts buried deeper in the wax are the ones that I love.
Yeah. But I think this one is a good one to finish off with, because I've been like talking about amazing musicians and all this sort of stuff. This band here, it's a party album. It was so politically incorrect, wrong, but it was the 80s and it was such a party album. It'd be the equivalent to almost like a Two Live Crew rock band, but not that blatant.
As nasty as they want to be.
Yeah, I guess. But and it's funny because like I grew up and I was like, why the hell are the superheroes copying one of my favorite Australian bands? I was like, why are they taking the name Uncanny X-Men? I didn't even know what the X-Men were.
Oh, really?
I just knew that this was the band that. So this is their first album, 'Cause Life Hurts. Typical airbrush. I mean, like this was the one that I had to kind of shove behind, other albums because I was afraid because I was probably like 14 or so when this came
afraid
out.
Your parents are going to be like,
what do you have in there?
And it was, and then especially with the back cover, I don't know if you can zoom into there, but there's a lot of things that, good Christian Midwest, Bible Belt people don't do.
Empty film box.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a Kodak film.
Yeah.
You got a cassette, you got a drumstick, you got some organic green material that may or may not be sticky icky.
Yeah. There's a lot of things. There's a couple pills and stuff like that.
I love stuff like this that's so filled with things for you to look at and pick out.
Yeah. And they were great musicians. Like, don't get me wrong. They were fantastic musicians, but they didn't take anything serious. Like, that was their thing. They were a party band. I mean, like, honestly, they had songs like, Best Looking Guy in the Factory. It's basically about him singing about how he was, everyone else looked like a bunch of dogs and he was really good looking and got all the chicks. And, his name is Brian Mannix, and like another Melbourne band. And growing up, you would see, and that was the thing that was so amazing about these Melbourne bands, is you would see them out and about. Like you would go down to the shops and you would see these bands, because at the time the Melbourne music scene wasn't huge, but it was very, it was very vibrant. And so he would walk around in like a tank top and have like skinny like leather pants on and foxtails hanging off of him and big hair, and walk around and like that sort of stuff, and just be like this bigger than life, tiny little 4'9" guy. But
so just Sunset Strip in Australia.
Yeah, way before Sunset Strip.
Yeah,
like because this is like early 80s, I think. Is it? That's like 85 maybe?
Yes,
84?
It looks like 1985.
But he was the epitome of like hair metal before hair metal was kind of out. But it was funny because like people used to, like critics would try to rip on them, but then they were such great musicians that they kind of just had to be like, yeah, we don't like them. They're full of themselves, or they had to kind of, because they could never knock the music because the music was great.
So this is 'Cause Life Hurts.
Yeah.
Then we have What You Give Is What You Get.
Yes. And another little secret hidden, ganja, and there was.
This looks like John C. Reilly in Stone.
That's true. Yeah. There was one thing in here. Like if you read, where is it? Stuff at Taxidermy, First National Sperm Bank. Where is it? You Kill 'Em, We Chill 'Em. There's just all like hidden gems in here all over the place.
A feast for the eyes and ears.
Yeah, I don't know if this is.
Is there another image in the gatefold?
Oh, it's a gatefold.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is an original from my youth. And
so, we've got the portraits and the lyrics.
Yes,
It looks like.
Look at that.
Yeah. I like the use of blue.
Yeah. But, you know, when you check out the videos I post,
we will.
I'm talking to the audience.
Oh, yeah. You guys.
Oh, when you look at them, you'll get the full picture. They're hilarious and funny and great, but good musicians. But anyway, so they were a great band to go see live. They were kind of like the rock Beastie Boys of their time, where they were just. I mean, I'm surprised someone hasn't come and got those albums off me and burnt them, because they're just not right.
There's nothing wrong with not right.
And I don't think you'll see.
I'll mess with this later.
Actually, this album, funny enough, when I was doing research, just popped up on iTunes.
Really?
Or you can't buy it because it's restricted. The
parental,
the country zone.
Oh, okay.
But you can listen to it on Apple Music.
Okay.
Which for years I haven't been able to find it anywhere. And I can't find any of this stuff. I've never seen it in the States, and that sort of stuff. And so that's a deep Australian dig.
I love it. I mean, it's cool. We kind of challenge folks who listen to the show and watch the show to do the homework and listen to the things that we talk about and try to take their influences in too. Having grown up with these bands, are there any other bands that you've discovered since then or recently that you hold as dear to your heart as the ones that you listened to and experienced in that formative time?
I don't know if, like, right now, I think in years to come there'll be bands that I've discovered that I'll hold super dear. There seems to be, and I've changed the landscape of what I listen to a lot now. I'm into like a lot more darker wave kind of stuff, and so there's a new generation of these really hardworking bands that they're out of like LA, out of New York, and stuff like that are just really putting in the work and doing the club tours again, to 30, 40 people, and then next time they come through there's 80 to 150, and the next time they come through there's like 500. And so there's all these amazing bands that are emerging that have their own unique sound again. I think we're kind of on this whole, I think COVID really did a hard reset and really kind of, people are like, wow, we need to create art again, or we've had the time or the luxury to do that. There was a big festival, second year running, it's called Cruel World. It's held out at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena.
I really wanted to go to see that.
And I've done both years. And so, you've got Echo and the Bunnymen, and you've got, all these. Morrissey was there. Love him, hate him. He's, I love his music because I love the Smiths, so I give him grace. So all of these legacy bands, but sprinkled amongst them are all these new bands,
And that's so cool at a festival like that.
And so it really, and it's married so close together because a lot of these new bands grew up on these older bands. They're not ripping them off. They're influenced by them, and they're doing their own thing. And so you've got bands like Cold Cave, which are amazing. If you like anything like New Order-ish, they really carry some of the essence of that, but not copy. They're brilliant. They're smart.
Bring the influences in.
They're intelligent. They're such an intelligent band, and such. You've got Drab Majesty. You've got, got all these Soft Kill. You've got all these bands that are coming out and doing all this new exciting stuff that I'm buying their albums. So my entire collection is probably from like 1980 till about 2001, except for these new bands. And so I'm buying their vinyl up and keeping it sacred like I did these other guys. So you're right, there is this kind of new thing,
And it happens like every 20 years.
Yeah.
There's a new scene.
Yeah. And last year was great too, and Billy Idol came, and just what's exciting is you see a band like Berlin play to 45,000 people. They probably haven't played to 45,000 people in 30 years. Like I literally think I saw Berlin on like a cruise ship tour or something like that, you know, where they were playing cruise ships. And to watch those bands get so excited because everyone is singing their lyrics in the crowd and there's 40,000 people, you know, chanting their stuff. Watching Billy Idol, I've seen him a couple times throughout. I love Billy Idol. I love Generation X. You know, I think he's a weird, crazy, cool character.
Oh yeah,
but
character is the right word.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
he has created a brand.
Yeah,
and kind of sustained.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
there was a time in the '90s where you didn't hear about him much, but he's still back. And his guitarist is Steve Stevens.
Oh, he was
I love
brilliant.
Him. Yes.
Yeah, and like so they played Cruel World, and I was lucky enough to have access where I could get backstage and be around them and be like here where they're singing. I never take that for granted. I've seen so many of these bands. I've grown up, met them, talked to them, and discovered, you know, how incredible they are. You know, but watching him sing, he went bonkers. Like he was, you know. I'll send some photos of like just the crowd. It was like sheer mayhem. It was crazy. And then Gary Newman. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. He's kind of reinvented himself.
He is incredible. I could literally probably do a show on Gary Newman. He is so current and relevant. So that the kids that are listening to all that dark underground, dark wave, you know, dark stuff that's out right now, he's right there. Right there with it. And you know, he's touring with like Ministry and touring with like, you know, Frontline Assembly, and you know, doing these huge, you know, big festival shows and stuff like that, and doesn't miss a beat.
No.
It is just incredible to watch, like how he's embraced stuff and really not reinvented, because he never really went away. He just, you know, kind of
he has like transformed.
Yeah. And people will probably send me like deaf things, but to me, he's like a Bowie. You know,
I agree.
He really, in the electronic world, he made electronic music. I mean, yes, there's guys like Kraftwerk, and you know, there's other guys like Fad Gadget and all that sort of stuff. But let's be honest, some of that just didn't sound incredible. Yeah, it set the building blocks, but you couldn't really just groove to it. Gary Newman grooved from the beginning, you know, and he really created an accessible, weird, new punk experimental sound that no one could tame, because everything they did was weird and experimental and weird and all that, and he made it into pop. You know, Human League, Soft Cell, they did it too. You know, and this is way before Depeche Mode and all these these bands. You know, like if you ever watched like the Synthtopia, like or was it there's a British synth pop documentary. Like the first half an hour, I'm like, ugh, I just want to fast forward it. I mean, I respect it, but I'm just like, nothing sounded great. And then you get, you know, Gary Newman coming out, and I'm just like, what? We're electric? How you know, just
he has definitely sustained his career.
Yeah,
for sure. I love talking to you about this stuff because the passion comes through.
Absolutely.
And it's great being with like-hearted and like-minded.
Yeah, I'm just a nerd that literally would sit on my living room floor with my headphones on in front of the stereo and look at my albums.
Me too.
And dance like them. You know? Yeah.
We can't thank you enough for taking the time out. If you guys remember, we did a What's in Your Bag with him like 2 or 3 Crossroads shows ago, and he was carrying his road case. It was a bigger case than this.
I've got a couple. I've got
And I didn't know him from Adam, but I saw him like for hours at the show, and I'm like, we got to talk to this dude. What's in your road case?
I was getting stalked and I didn't know it.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
You were. But it means so much to us for you to share your story, your journey, your musical passion, and a lot of great music that a lot of these folks probably have never heard either.
Yeah.
We can't thank you enough, Wil.
Well, I really appreciate it. I was so excited. I told my wife what I was doing, and she says, why are you going to go and talk about your records? I was like, honey, it's more than that. You know?
Yes, I am going to talk about my records. Yeah. So we want to remind everybody watching that we have the YouTube channel. We're doing a bunch of shorts. We're putting a lot of stuff out. What am I missing anything? We're doing unboxings that are very popular with folks. John has started rating album art, so that's a good thing. Yes. We still have our shorts coming out on Fridays, and we've got a lot of stuff in the hopper that we're working on, and we just can't thank all of you enough for watching as much as you have. It's been beautiful to see this thing blossom into what it is. If you'll meet me over on my camera, we also want to thank Jacob Hansen and Keith Toombs for their devotion to this crazy thing that we've decided to do, and for their hard work and their heart that they've put into it with us. It is not lost on me. It's not lost on Wheels. And I think when you watch our YouTube channel, it won't be lost on you either. So we want you guys to like, subscribe, comment, share, write haikus about the show, 17 syllables. Will be sharing a playlist with us. We will include it in the description on YouTube so that every one of you can enjoy the music that Wil loves and enjoys himself. For Wheels, for Wil, I'm Jay, and we'll catch you all the next time around.